Here I am to save the day. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing great, absolutely peachy keen, fantastic even. How are you? Hopefully you're doing very well. Let me tell you, I love uh marinara sauce. Marinara sauce with some good garlicky bread. Just one of my favoriteest things. And I feel very blessed that Makali has allowed me to create delicious, chewy, gooey bread with cheesy on top. And I also get to have marinara sauce. But yeah, I hope that you're all doing wonderful this week. Today, I was going to talk a little bit about how not having a path, like a specific path, can be both good and bad, and why I do the things I do. So to me, I understand when people say they like, okay, man, like I'm a Christian, so I follow the teachings of the Bible, I follow the teachings of Jesus, and that's just what it is, right? Like I understand that. I get it. Or someone will say like, hey, I'm a Hindu of this lineage, or I'm a Hindu of that lineage, so these are the things I believe, or these are the rules that I go by. Perfectly understandable. For me, uh, my own beliefs and understandings are largely motivated by my own research, but also my own experiences. Where part of the reason I came to believe so firmly in God again is very specifically because I had an experience of God. I had a very uh, long series then of other experiences of like God and the nature of God, and like contemplating what that means, what it means for me personally, and all these other things. I had a very long experience where, for instance, I was a Muslim for 4 years, followed all of the various different rules and things like that to varying degrees, and because like when I first got into it, I was kind of basically a Wahhabi, sort of. I wouldn't have called myself a Wahhabi at the time, but I followed all the rules very specifically and like to as much of a T as I possibly could. And I was very concerned with following the rules and dictates of the Bible. I'm sorry, the Bible, the Quran. It'd be funny if I was like really concerned with just following the Bible and the Quran. I mean, I guess you could be, but that just seems somewhat needless. No, yes, I'm sorry. The Quran, and I went through it. I was doing it all very, very much letter of the law. Uh, when I was younger, especially, I really much had a personality which drove me to do things like very much I was very obsessed with following rules and obsessed with getting things correct and getting thing and especially like in terms of religion, getting things like the proper way and making sure that I followed all the little rules and things like that. Oh, cool, bandit ashes. That was like my thing, and I was always trying to make sure that I adhered in some way to that. And then when I left Islam, because eventually I just decided that I could not justify it logically, and when I became an atheist, then I became very obsessed with the idea of things matching facts or science or what the fuck ever, I would go through like all these long lists. What would eventually happen the older I got, especially after I got a little bit more into Buddhism, was I started to realize that, I mean, like, I was never happy following all the rules. It seemed like all the rules didn't really improve my life. They didn't improve, like, being so adamant about, like, for instance, only using, like, logical evidence or whatever. I can't even, I want to, like, the word is escaping me. But, like, physical evidence and or things like that for, like, the existence of God and stuff like that, I realized after a while was, like, making me kind of miserable. Essentially, because what I realized, even as an atheist, at least towards the end of my atheism, was I was like, I still feel like this strong pull to, like, get closer to God and get closer to, like, or, like, to experience these, like, religious things, and I'm just being miserable by not incorporating them at all. But the problem was that because I didn't have any specific evidence, it was, like, almost impossible to pray or do anything because, like, to me, it's like, well, I want to believe in this stuff, but at the same time, because I don't have any solid proof or evidence, it's, like, really difficult for me to believe in any of it. It feels like I'm just following my own fancy. So, but as I got older, I eventually got to, hey, how you doing? I eventually got into Buddhism, and Buddhism would start me to have, like, certain experiences that were very difficult to explain. Like, at first I was like, oh, some of these are, like, basically, like, little hallucination type deals, but, like, and especially, like, when it was first happening, that was pretty easy to say. But then, like, as I got deeper and deeper into meditation and I started experiencing things that made me feel things that definitely didn't just feel like little hallucinations, and things that were, like, impactful and meaningful to me and things like that, it was, like, getting harder and harder to be like, okay, this is just, like, little minor hallucinations or something caused by deep meditation. And especially because a lot of them would have impacts on me after I stopped meditating. Some of them were very deep impacts. Like, some of the most profound, this will sound weird, but, like, some of the most profound terror I ever experienced happened during meditation when I first tried the transcendental method of meditation, and I had some very, very vivid, weird experiences. And, like, and it was like I was there, man. It wasn't just like, excuse me. There we go. It wasn't just like, oh man, I'm having a big imagination. It's like, no, I was fucking there. So that made it really difficult to just be like, okay, there's nothing to this, and it's just my brain and all that stuff. That made that kind of difficult to say after a while, just because, like, the experiences. Oh, skeleton. Hi, skeleton. Well, you have a lot of health for a skeleton. And gotcha. And there we go. But this made me go through a bunch of things, and eventually, I would end up, like, Buddhism, at least in early Buddhism, is not, like, super devotional, but there's some devotional aspects to it as I understood it. And I also understood that depending on the school of Buddhism you went for, there was more devotion or less devotion, and it kind of depended on what exactly you were going for among, like, certain other things. Oh, hello, turtle. He's having a little nap. Naps are good. I'm gonna let him have his nap. I don't want to disturb him. And, like, there was this moment where I tried a meditation on Guanyin, that was like a Vajrayana school, which is a little bit more devotional. And I tried out this meditation, and I felt like ecstatic afterwards. I felt so good, and it just made me realize that maybe I should try at least a little devotion. And then trying a little devotion and incorporating it, you know, like a little bit more into my life. I started to realize how much I had missed it and how much good it was doing, like specifically my mental health. I realized that it was just making me feel better. Getting more and more into it. Right. And then I read the Bhagavad Gita for the first time in a long time. Because I had read it several times previously, but like it was let's see. Where am I? Okay, I think I need to go down there and then go swooping around. But the first time I read the Bhagavad Gita, like after I tried a little bit of devotion and had been meditating a lot, I had been meditating quite a lot as a Buddhist. I had, you know, I was doing like about an hour and a half each day, roughly. Which is not, okay, that's not like, oh my god, levels of meditation, but that's a pretty good amount. And some days I would get in like 2 or 3 hours, another day, you know, it depended on the day, but, you know, I was doing a good amount of meditation. So I was kind of going through this stuff. But the first time oops, hey, don't you do that, you silly Billy. Ow. Big glowy arrows. But like the more I was going through it and doing this stuff, and then I go and I read the Bhagavad Gita, and then basically what ends up happening is like it just clicks for me. The first time I read the Bhagavad Gita after doing like this devotional work and really coming back to it and really investigating it, like the first time I read it, it was just like, this is it. This makes perfect sense. Like for all of the experiences I've been having, oh my goodness. That was very mean, Senor Bear, and it did not need to be. Well, wait, why am I saying that? I attacked him. Oh well, I mean, he's gonna attack me either way, but that's beside the point. And going through all this, and then like having just like the Bhagavad Gita just like speak to me and just make perfect sense, and just be like, okay, no, this is something that I need to incorporate into my life. And I just kept reading it and rereading it and rereading it, and I started to like actually pray to Krishna. And it wasn't long after I started praying to Krishna that I would have my first like spiritual visions like of Krishna, where like I would be breaking down into tears, into like sheer ecstasy and things like that. And once that started happening, you know, it just got to be more and more of a thing where it's like, okay, this is just what I need to be doing. And I started really, I had read and knew a decent bit about Hinduism and certain Hindu practices and things like that. One moment, I need a bite of garlic bread. It's delicious. Mmm. Mmm. That's good marinara sauce, too. Marinara sauce. Um, um, um. But once I really started doing that, it wasn't too long until I discovered Soy Sarpiananda, And then it wasn't too long after that that I'm gonna use this slender sword for a minute. It wasn't too long after that that I um just discovered Ramakrishna. And then once I discovered Ramakrishna and the way that they were talking about like the worship of Ma Kali and things like that. No, I think I need to actually kill the... Excuse me, I'm putting a key in here. Is there... Oh, because the dialogue's up. I'm like, is there a reason you weren't blocking there? Jeez, gentlemen. Alright. Cool. But yeah. And then the first time I worshipped Ma Kali, I had this incredibly powerful experience, which, you know, I literally felt like I was being lifted off the ground, and like I was being choked, and then like I was like in this form of like ecstasy, and it was just like wowie kapowie. Having a moment there, don't mind me. I was like, wowie kapowie. This is pretty intense, and you know, the rest is kind of history. I really continued to worship, and I got more and more into bhakti and devotional service. And, you know, I really started to realize that bhakti was kind of like the path for me. But during this entire time, I never immediately thought that, like, for instance, everything the Bhagavad Gita says has to be completely true. I felt like there was a lot of things within it that I would definitely say were very helpful to me. And there were a lot of things within it that I was very interested in, and I really took a lot of it very seriously. But if there was something within it, or if there was something within a teaching that did not make sense to me, or something that, you know, I felt like came from a cultural source rather than, you know, like a real substantial place, I was very cautious of it. And during all this time as well, I started getting way more into reading things like Rumi and Ibn Arabi again. And I had read a lot of Rumi when I was a Muslim. I was a little less familiar with like Ibn Arabi and some of the other figures, but the more I learned and went out and kind of studied all these various different paths, and I got very intent with some paths and maybe a little less intent with others. Like, I have some understanding of Jewish mysticism. I have an interest in Judaism. I have a lot of books on Judaism over on my shelf there, and it's very interesting to me, but I certainly wouldn't say I know like everything about the rabbinical tradition, but I do know a good portion about it, and I've read a good portion of the, well, at least English translations of the Talmud and various other things like that, and I engage with it, but that's not necessarily my area of expertise. But the more I studied, the more it occurred to me that almost any path seemed like it could get there. And the more visions I was having, the more I was meditating and praying and get connecting with God, I found that if I prayed to God in a manner that was very Christian-like, I would still get somewhere. If I prayed in a way that was like more like a Muslim, or if I prayed like as a Hindu, it didn't matter. I would still get there. And I had visions of Christ, I had visions of Krishna, I had visions of Makali, I had visions of like completely indescribable things, some things that are like almost look like eldritch abominations in a sense. It was really weird and really interesting. But the more I studied, I never at any point stopped and thought, this is the only path. I had kind of gotten to a point where I realized that the truth transcends any one path, and I really started. The more I got to a coherent philosophy, it started to seem to me that the mystical tradition across all traditions is connected and can get you closer to God, and that being having the desire to love God and get close to God was the main thing, and that was the important thing. Having a desire to really get somewhere. And then it occurred to me that like the more I studied, like, you know, even atheists have reported certain experiences like this, and they would probably not define it as God. And in some cases, I actually know about a lady who had an experience where she said she couldn't describe it as anything but God, but she didn't want to describe it as God. It was a little weird, but that's what she said. She said she couldn't describe it as anything but God. I'm not trying to put words in her mouth. But you know, like, hey, I'm not going to try and force you to see things my way. But the more I did this, the more it was like, okay, there is no one path that has everything. There are paths that are more comprehensive, and there are paths that are better. And I also think that there are paths that fit people better. I think some people fit certain kinds of mysticism and certain kinds of mystical paths much better than others. For me, what eventually got to the point where I studied the Sufis. I studied, or very, well, obviously various different Sufis. I studied a lot of Sufism. I studied a lot of Christian mysticism. I've studied a lot of, you know, Hindu mysticism, obviously, and Buddhist mysticism, and blah 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 blah. I have studied as numerous paths as I possibly can. Some cases I only study a little bit, but in a lot of cases I try to get as deep and down into the tradition as I possibly can, and I try to, you know, figure out how it all fits together. Uh, but that is also why I think if someone wants to take on one path or another, that is perfectly fine. But for me, the most beneficial thing has been to read about all these different paths, to study them, to try and imbibe as much as I possibly can from some of them, to try and feel the love of God in each of these different traditions, and to try and understand them together as best as I can in the broadest picture I can. That has been easily just like it has enriched my life tremendously. Like, mm, mm. This marinara sauce and garlic bread is enriching my life tremendously as well. But um, and the older I got, and the more time I put into these traditions, I did not want to give up any one of them. I love Christian mysticism. It has done so much for me. And studying Meister Eckhart and, you know, various others, you know, various saints, you know, like Saint Francis of Assisi and so many others has given me so much tremendous happiness and joy. And practicing and praying, like the way they would describe prayer, has given me so much joy. Practicing like a Hindu has given me so much joy. And coming to terms with things, and it puts it in such a way where what I do is I trust in God to give me guidance and to give me love and appreciation and understanding for these traditions. And there is no one tradition that I want to stick to exclusively. Advaita Vedanta can encompass a lot of these traditions, but I find that sometimes it lacks a certain Christian lens, for instance. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need the Christian lens, but it looking at it through that lens occasionally helps me tremendously. And that's just part of what I wanted to talk about. Is like, I think, you know, if you really want to stick to just one tradition and maybe do a little bit of studying on the side, I think that can be tremendously beneficial. But for me, oh, you're very fast. Oh, God. Ouchie. This guy is really fast. I feel like I'm fighting, like a Skaven assassin or something. I wonder, is this the only boss down here? I actually don't know. You know, I'm just gonna walk back. Do I have a healing? I don't think I have a... No, I just have blessings. That's fine. Bubbles. Bubble, bubble, bubble. But you know, like, I really find that that has been the most beneficial to me. And that is why I don't stick to any one path. Um, if people ask, I have tended to describe myself as a Hindu specifically because, like, if there is any one path I can think of that would actually allow me to do what I'm talking about, like, as openly as this, I would say it would probably be Hinduism. But even then, like, there are plenty of elements of Hinduism that I don't just, you know, like, say, hey, this is, like, the most true. Like, I don't necessarily hold, like, the Bhagavad Gita or any specific Hindu text that much higher than, like, you know, like, the glorious texts I've read within Christian mysticism, like, oh, I'm sorry, that's just, I'm sorry, little crab. I feel bad. I shouldn't have done that. But, here, I'm just gonna take this. Don't mind me. I'm trying to remember how you get through and around this. But that's just, like, the way I feel. And, like, I think that the truth, I have read the truth as, or, you know, quote unquote, the truth. I have read that truth about the emptiness of existence and the wholeness and the oneness of God. Uh, I have no idea how to. Open that gate thingy. I'm assuming there's a lever somewhere that I just missed. I'll find it later, I guess. Or there's like another way around over there. Hmm. Well, there's a lever on that side. Interesting. Necessary item? Beware of behind. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. Oh wait, there's clearly a... At least it seemed like it was kind of a door. Maybe not? I mean, yeah, look at that. That totally looks like it's a door of some sort. Oh. I don't know. Whatever. I'll have to look it up and come back or something. I don't remember what you gotta do in this particular area. Oh no, he climbed, but he fall. And, you know, that's why I think that people should do what feels the most comfortable, what makes the most sense for them, and explore these traditions, but also, you know, try to find a place where you feel at home, you know? Like, it... I don't really feel like people have to only, like, inhabit one tradition. And, I mean, I feel like I've gotten... Oh, I didn't drop down here. Is this just going to take me to the... Oh, it does. I'm silly. Chew up. And then this opens the one back there. Haha, ho ho. Oh. I really would prefer it if you didn't make it so that I couldn't block while you read random little messages about a heavy door opening. I understand that a heavy door opened because that's what happens in all the other ones, you silly Billy. But, that's fine. So yeah, I don't know. That's just like some food for thought. And that's just something that I personally find is important. And it's part of the reason why, like, although sometimes like, if I describe myself as a Hindu, I feel like sometimes that misses, like, that misses, like, for instance, the Christian aspect to my worship. That misses, like, the times where I use, like, the name Allah, or that misses the times when I, like, encompass or try to encompass these other traditions within my own practice and things like that, you know, like, and it feels like I understand why I can do electrify on this one. Cool. Oh wow. I don't know if I've ever fought this one before, honestly. Huh. Kind of neat. Okay then. What is? Oh, death root. Okay. Likely rump. Okay. But yeah, and that's part of the reason why I and I also think that the truth as I have come to it, understand it, encompasses more than one tradition. And it's not a specifically Hindu truth or Buddhist truth or Christian truth or anything. I think that the divine is far beyond any one version of truth. Not I mean, Jimmy Dean. But that's just what I wanted to talk about today, and hopefully you guys thought my little story and stuff like that was interesting. And I hope that you will find blessings on your various paths and can find God in your heart. Because remember, that's where God dwells. God is not within a temple, God is not within a mosque, God is not within a church. God is within you. And within the world itself. And is also beyond. Isn't that wonderful? One of the wonderful mysteries of God, how they are both transcendent and immanent. Really neat. Okay, I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day and jump for joy with biscuits today. And goodbye, and I love you, and God loves you, and Makali loves you, and Christ loves you, and everybody loves you. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, love you, bye.